Ryan Grubb is in as offensive coordinator at Alabama, and Nick Sheridan has been demoted. Let's talk about what this means for Alabama, what this means for college football, what this means for their quarterback situation going into the 2025 offseason. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We talk college football 365 days a year, 24/7 around here. And I would love for you to join us by hitting that subscribe button, liking this video, and answering this question in a comment. Do you think that Ryan Grubb joining Alabama is going to lead to them winning the SEC championship? And do you think that Austin Mack is going to be the starting quarterback in 2025? Forgive me. We've had lots of coordinator news here of late, right? First, we got Chip Kelly leaving Ohio State to go join the Las Vegas Raiders with Pete Carroll, leaving 2 openings at coordinator for Ohio State on the defensive side and the offensive side, in addition to Justin Fry leaving the offensive line coaching position to join the Arizona Cardinals. Then we got Brent Venables deciding, hey, the best coordinator on campus or in the nation for Oklahoma is me. So he is going to add Wes Goodwin as inside linebackers coach and Nate Dreiling to the staff to fortify a defensive staff that he thinks is going to be one of the greatest in college football. Now, we're on to Ryan Grubb, who did exactly 1 year in the NFL, only to come back to Kalen DeBoer. This time, though, it is at Alabama, getting the band back together, as it were. This is a theme across college football. Across the football community is really, guys want to work with guys they know. But Ryan Grubb was also relieved of his duties as the Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator, and he had a job that he could go to. What was interesting about this is that Nick Sheridan, who was tight ends coach at Washington, was promoted to offensive coordinator in 2024, called the plays 2024. Jalen Milroe's quarterback. You underperform at the University of Alabama. Let's add to that, right? It's not that Alabama was bad. It's that you lost to Oklahoma, you lost to Vanderbilt, and you lost to Michigan in your Alari Quest Bowl game. The offense was not as good as it has been in years. This also means that Alabama is going to have its 4th offensive coordinator in 4 years, which is kind of remarkable, given that it's been Bill O'Brien, Tommy Rees, Nick Sheridan, and now Ryan Grubb. Does this mean, though, that Ryan Grubb being added to the staff is going to be a good thing? Is it a net positive? Perhaps, right? The reason we get to say perhaps, is because Ryan Grubb was the offensive coordinator at Washington when they had Michael Penix Jr. and Nick Sheridan was the tight ends coach when they had Michael Penix Jr. and Kalen DeBoer was the head coach when he was calling the plays. Now, what I find interesting about all of this is that Kalen DeBoer has not come out and said, I'm going back to play calling, although that is his superpower. It's fascinating to me that we're back in this space in 2025. The day of the CEO head coach comes and goes. It's never constant. It's always in flux. The reason that is because guys that get to be head coach usually get to be head coach because they're outstanding play callers, offensively or defensively. When they have to give that particular role up and they have to focus on the entire football program, they suffer. Especially if they do not have an offensive coordinator who has done the job or even been a head coach before, a defensive coordinator who's done the job, been a head coach before. This is true of Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. They suffered their first 3-loss season at the University of Alabama since Nick Saban's first year in 2007. Okay? That means you go 17 years between 3-loss regular seasons, and then you lose to a Michigan team that ain't got no quarterback. I realize that some of y'all believe that Davis Warren is a quarterback. I assure you he was good enough to beat Alabama, but they would even tell you we didn't really have a quarterback in 2024. Okay. Then add to this that Kalen DeBoer, everywhere he has gone, where he has been successful, he's been calling the plays. Fresno State, Indiana, all the way back to the Dakotas. Now you are adding to the mix a guy you know, a guy who knows you, a guy that knows your staff. You're also adding him to a mix that includes 6'6", 235-pound Austin Mack, a dude that committed to Washington out of Folsom after throwing for more than 3,400 yards and a bunch of touchdowns on a team that went 12-2 in high school, and then decided to follow DeBoer. And at the time, Ryan Grubb, but ends up just being DeBoer and Nick Sheridan, to Alabama. He's sitting behind a couple of guys, Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, Dylan Lonergan. Lonergan has since transferred, right, to Boston College. Ty Simpson is still there. He is earmarked for some people as a starter, but I think he can still make a dent here. And then add to the mix Kalen Russell. Kalen Russell, who decided to go to Alabama thinking he could compete for the job. How does Ryan Grubb entering the mix help you or hurt you is a question that Alabama fans are going to have to answer for themselves, especially knowing that you're really not going to know much about this program until August. And if then, you're not going to know much about this program and those quarterbacks until you play SEC competition. And as an avid Oklahoma fan, myself, I can tell the SEC is not no up-down situation. It's an all-up situation, meaning you got to punch up. And nobody should know that better than Alabama this year after they lost to Vanderbilt as the number 1 ranked team in the country. That can't happen again if you indeed get to number 1 again. And that is an open discussion. So adding Ryan Grubb to the mix, knowing that you have to get some wins here, and by wins I mean 10. Alabama's not a place that does well with seasons that don't end in double-digit win totals. I remember 2020 season, Nick Saban is playing against Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, and they're looking to go 11-2. And that was a down year because they were playing in the Citrus Bowl. This is what those fans have come to expect from the football team. And the University of Alabama is the state of Alabama. My favorite way of defining this and giving this example is Jimbo Fisher was told he was going to be the next head coach at UAB after being the offensive coordinator at LSU. Comes to find out that the Alabama Regents refused to give the athletic director what he wanted in his head coach. Athletic director at UAB said, why? And the Regents at Alabama said, we cannot have someone who can compete with Nick Saban in Alabama because Alabama is where the money falls from, and we have to protect Alabama football. That, if nothing else, tells you how important Tide football is to the state of Alabama. Even in 2020, people forget this. Governor of Alabama was going, no, we're playing football. Why? Because, yeah, people are getting sick, but we need the revenue to come through. Alabama goes and wins the national championship. Alabama ran through without any positive COVIDs from their players, or I should say, very few positive COVIDs from their player, and then had the positive from Nick Saban. Didn't matter. They still won the football game, and they ended up winning the national championship. All to say, this is what Ryan Grubb is stepping into, and this is what Kalen DeBoer has been exposed to through his first year. Now, what remains to be seen is whether or not that man gets to stay Gene Stallings, becomes Mike Shula, or gets to be Nick Saban. And I'm here to tell you, ain't been but one Nick Saban.